Welcome back. Episode 19 of the Black Eagles podcast. Your host, Sinan Schwarting, is here once again, live from New York and from just outside of Antwerp, Belgium. My co-host, Kaan and Sinan. Welcome back, sir. What do you got to say?
Thank you very much. I think we got a lot of stuff to talk about again about today's match, so let's get right into it, I'd say.
Yeah, let's. Well, so, and instead of doing our usual thing where we, start analyzing it and then stop halfway through, and then let's just, give me the summary, Kaan. Let's be organized today. Summarize what we've just viewed.
I'll just run down quickly the score proceedings, basically. So Beşiktaş played against Büyükşehir Erzurumspor today, who make their Super League return for the first time in about 20 years, I believe.
Welcome back.
And this is theoretically, traditionally an away game that the big three teams always feared, mainly because Erzurum can get really cold in winter. So I was already very happy that we got this match early on, so that we wouldn't be playing it there in November or December or something. So very happy about that. So, I went into this game with the mindset of, look, these guys kind of have probably on paper the worst team in the league. So we're gonna be okay, right? Well, no, not so much. It didn't take very long for Erzurum to take the lead. Yasmin Suk scored the opening goal after just, I believe, 16 minutes. And really at that point, Beşiktaş were nowhere in the match. And Erzurum had been coming at us from all sides, just whirling over us.
And what was his name again? How do you pronounce that?
Jasmine Suk, I think. Very special name, S-C-U-K. The commentator Ercan Taner, who was back commenting on the Beşiktaş game, he pronounced it more as Sak. So I'm not 100% sure on the pronunciation there, but
I really, it's S-C-U-K. So
yeah.
The boyish was skak, but that's definitely not what it is. But that was a pretty good game. That goal came at some relentless pressure already from Erzurum. I think they got back-to-back 4 or so corners where Tolga looked very insecure, in my opinion. I think we were lucky that it was just 1-0 at halftime. I think it could have been 2 easily, maybe even 3 or 4.
It could have been 3 maybe. Fortunately for us, that was not the case. We went into halftime 1-0, and really at that point I kind of felt like this is probably the worst half I've seen us play under Şenol Güneş, and I've kind of had that feeling. And I can think of a few games, or at least I can recall feeling like that before, but this was honestly, I think, the worst half we've ever played under Şenol Güneş. Fortunately, he made a change midway through the match. Caner Erkin came on in the 36th minute. He took off Oğuzhan Özyakup, who alongside basically everyone in midfield was kind of bleak. Basically the entire team was at that point. We switched from a 4-2-3-1 formation to a 4-4-2 formation, with Ryan Babel playing as the striker and Negredo kind of playing as the support striker, which was interesting. Adriano moved to the left wing, Caner left back, and Necip and Gary Medel the central mid, and Quaresma on the right, of course. But that didn't really pay off straight away. We didn't manage to get a goal or anything, but we did get a little bit more in the match, and we got a little bit of offense in before halftime at least. But then straight out of the gate in the second half, we equalized really quickly. In the 52nd minute, Gökhan Gönül actually managed to pull the score level on a Ricardo Quaresma corner, and that had already come after a good 5 minutes from us, putting them under pressure. But then after that goal, again, I kind of felt like Beşiktaş were allowing themselves to be put back asleep, sort of like a baby in a crib. But fortunately, the goal did come.
Yeah,
and
that
that was in the. Let me check. When was our second goal?
I can help you there. It was in the 76th minute.
Yeah, the 76th minute, a quick break on the right. Ricardo Quaresma through. Very poor defending, I had the impression. They were kind of cut open there with a quick pass. I don't know who the opening pass was from, but Quaresma on the right spotted Negredo's run, gave a rare low cross, because that's something that Ricardo Quaresma doesn't do often. And Negredo with a sublime back heel, beating the goalkeeper. That was a fantastic goal. 1-2.
The kind of goal that we looked for all season last year.
I believe that Dembaba scored a back heel goal against Erzurumspor for us a couple of years ago as well. But this was a really nice goal. And Ercan Taner, the commentator, he referred to Raul and Romario, who had scored goals like that before. And then he kind of dubbed it a Raul goal. And then in the 85th minute, Jermaine Lens, who had come in just a couple of minutes before, just quickly checking. Oh yeah, Negredo came off in the 82nd for Tolgai, and in the 72nd, Najib had come off for Lens in the 72nd, and Lens basically also made a good impression. He got a very... I was really upset about the yellow card he got, because he got a yellow card for an elbow. And it was literally, if it's elbow to face, of course, give a card. But it was literally face to elbow.
Exactly.
The guy just runs into his arm.
And there was clearly no intent, one way or another.
And he gives him a yellow card. I was like, what is this guy doing? And even Lens was kind of like, what? Yeah. And then in the 85th minute, Lens sent through on goal. I think it was Quaresma's pass. The goalkeeper just torpedoes him, completely flattens him. Lens was actually injured after that, had to receive multiple treatments, and ultimately couldn't continue the match. That's how hard the goalkeeper got him. Fortunately, the referee pointed to the spot at least, and Ricardo Quaresma converted that, and it was 1-3. So the scoreline would make it appear that we had a relatively easy night in Erzurum, but that's far from reality, I think I should say. Yeah. So 1-3 full time, but we again were confronted with all the shortcomings of the team, and even some things that I think we didn't expect, like our defensive weakness that is clearly also an issue. I think we saw that in this game as well, that we do have I think we were at one point very lucky that we had Domagoj Vida playing this game, because he made a really crucial tackle. I think that was already after the 1-0. And he really prevented the 2-0 from going in against the net and stuff like that. So,
was that where he really sacrificed him? Or there was one where he really sacrificed himself? I think that was it. No, I think that's a good summation right there. What more is there to say? I don't think there were any events you missed.
So Quaresma basically gave 2 assists here and scored a goal.
Yeah.
Did he play an amazing game? I don't think so. I don't think any of our players did. But that first half, should we talk about the first half first and just all the stuff going wrong there? Because there's plenty of stuff
that first half was tough, and I always when the comments start flying in on Twitter, in the group chats and all of that, and people start their layoffs, right? There were people were getting laid off left and right on the squad by our fans by halftime. Everybody had something to say about their least favorite player, and it was always sort of tinged by that sort of personal. You know how everyone feels about players on the team in those dark moments, because it all comes out. And so, there were the usual suspects that people were blaming. People like Quaresma, who are already perhaps divisive in a sense. Babel, maybe I heard some grumblings about Gökhan Gönül, although I didn't really even see him too much pressed in any direction. Of course, you have Ozan, who was actually very inept, one could say, regardless. I typically defend Ozan, but he was a non-presence in a way that one can't be too happy about, although I think we'll talk about that plenty in the way we were approaching the game, trying to use the wings. and I think like for a change, a guy like Negredo was being overlooked, not being so criticized. Although he really wasn't doing much, he wasn't really making any runs towards the goal. He kind of flubbed an opportunity early on. Um, Nothing was clicking, and it was one of those games where whoever you wanted to pick on, you could find three or four things they did wrong and give them hell. You know, uh, it wasn't pretty. It certainly wasn't pretty. And tactically, the big problem there was definitely that same insistence we've seen in previous negative performances anyway, to overutilize the wings and be completely predictable in that regard. And kind of haphazardly. Like what was sort of odd was like Quaresma was clearly off early on, and so I think I noticed he and Babel switched, and Babel went to the right side, and then he was playing this game of sending these crosses in, and that's not his game. Like that's not ever what he's been good at. He's not that technical. His final touch isn't that. That's not what we need him for. So that was odd. It seemed that there was this weird insistence on playing a certain way that clearly wasn't working and hasn't worked many times before. And so that was not very pleasant to watch, I'll say. And so while the chorus of boos and slander was coming in from Beşiktaş fans all around, I tried to sort of be sane about it and say, look, like they're going to have some kind of a talk during halftime. Something's going to have to change. Let's see what happens here. But even myself, the eternal optimist, like you have to say, like the holes that we've been noting throughout this preseason and the sort of failures of this transfer window were glaringly obvious. We need a number 10. We cannot have this sort of predictable wing. Like we rely, like the thing about playing on the wings is that even the best crossers and the best finishers in the air, there's still an element of luck. There's an element where, like, are the defenders on top of their game on that day or not? Are they big defenders who are not going to be so susceptible to that style of play? It's not a sustainable approach to attack. And as such, that was definitely the biggest takeaway for me in the first half, was we can't succeed with just this group of guys that we have. We need someone in the middle who can sort of at least threaten the opposition with the possibility that we're going to come at them in another way, from another angle, using a different methodology. That was definitely my big takeaway. Beyond that, Tolga is still shaky himself to some extent, but even worse, I think the guys around him do not have. They're not playing back to
confidence in him.
They're not playing the ball back to him, which I said last week. They're not. They don't look particularly comfortable when the attack comes on in a way that, like, they know that from a certain angle and a certain way that the keeper will be there to stop a shot. They don't have that confidence, and that's troubling. That's very troubling, and it's not a good sign. As far as, like, if there's any truth to the grumblings that the board doesn't want to make any moves or whatever, like, kind of hopefully silly nonsense that is, that mentality's got to go. We have holes, like big, glaring, deep holes. So that's my take on the first half. What do you think, Kaan?
I kind of have a different take, so that's probably a good thing, so we don't repeat the same thing. Like, for me, I didn't even think we were using the wings all that much, because I just felt like we were constantly on the back foot in the first half.
That's true. There was a lot of that.
It just felt like Erzurum were coming at us, and we just kept losing the ball. And something I really didn't like is that we were using the long ball a lot. And I remember last week, the Akhisar match, I said that in the first minute we played the long ball, and I was like, oh my god, it's going to be one of those games. And fortunately, that one didn't turn out to be one of those games. That early long ball from Pepe turned out to be a rare long ball in that match. But in this match, it was constantly long ball, aerial duels here, and losing those duels, losing physical battles, even Pepe. And the main issue for me as well, when we talk about our midfield, I just felt it was constantly getting skipped. We weren't using our midfield. And was that due to the fact that they weren't coming to ask the ball? Probably in part, but I think it was also because we were playing. Passivity. We were just, it's kind of like a flipperkast. How do you say a flipper? Like,
I don't know.
What is a flipperkast?
The passivity you're talking about is very obvious.
No, but what is a flipperkast in English? On a computer you have these a pinball machine, and it kind of felt like a pinball match. Like the ball went there and then it came back. Well, back and forth, and always with a long ball, basically, like kind of like tennis or ping pong or whatever. But every time the midfield was getting skipped, and I just felt like what illustrated the first half for me was just Ozan going for those aerial duels and just coming up short every time. But that was like the only way for him to seemingly get a touch on the ball, and then he got taken off in the 36th minute. But was it really? It wasn't just him who was bad, but we felt so powerless in that first half, and Erzurum were doing really well, putting high pressure on the ball, going with 3 to 4 guys at the player in possession, recuperating possession, and then just coming at us and running at us, and they know that we don't really like that, especially when the defenders aren't too confident with Tolga in goal. You can just see the defenders were shaky, and I think that's in large part due to Tolga just not being able to inspire confidence in them, and it's just so important. And unfortunately, both Pepe and especially Vida are such good defenders that they were still able to, contain Erzurum's players to a certain extent. But honestly, I think if we played a better opponent and we would be that lackluster, I think this would have been a 2-3-0 first half, and then there's no coming back. Now, fortunately, like we said, 1-0 at halftime, and this really was a match of two halves, I guess, because in the second half, I guess Erzurum just couldn't keep it up. Maybe they felt like they were going to defend the 1-0. I don't know what their thinking was, because as good as they were in the first half, I thought they were really poor in the second half. I think that they... we can say, okay, we turned it around and we made it 3-1 and we were good in the second half. I don't know if we were necessarily that good in the second half. I just think that Erzurum weren't good. They forgot to play. They forgot to continue playing the game they were playing in the first half, because when we initially switched to 4-4-2, they still seemed to have everything pretty much under control. But in the second half, as soon as the match got kicked off, they didn't have anything under control anymore. We were coming at them and we were putting them under pressure. And I think it was very clear early on that we were going to equalize. And the trick for them was keep that equalizer at bay as long as possible. Don't concede early. Otherwise, they'd probably lose. And that's what happened. But... having said that, when we scored the equalizer, I thought, okay, now we're going to score a second one. We're going to win this. But then that didn't really happen straight away. And I thought they kind of rebounded a little bit. And mainly because we didn't have this sense of urgency anymore. I had the impression that for us, we really... I just felt like Beşiktaş were coming out of the gate and they were like, okay, we have to get this equalizer really quickly, and once we get that equalizer, we can get composed again a little bit, and we can, pull a little bit back, don't take too many risks, definitely don't concede a second one, and that second goal will come. That's the impression I had, and that was fortunately what happened. But I wasn't happy in the way that it did happen, because, how I said last week against Lask that their goals kind of came falling from the air.
The heavens.
Yeah. I felt that way kind of about the second goal, because up until that second goal, after our equalizer, there's a good 20 minutes in between there. I honestly never really had the feeling of, okay, we're gonna get that second goal now quickly, and we're putting chances together, and we're being dangerous. I kind of felt like our second goal kind of came at a lucky moment. Well, lucky. Yeah. I mean, I think
We're
luck.
definitely on the attack, but yeah, I know what you mean.
I think luck is kind of a theme of this week. I mean, if you look at how we managed to qualify for the playoffs in the Europa League with that late goal in Linz, and now this match, I think definitely our fair share of luck involved here, mainly because Erzurum just weren't up to it in the second half.
Well,
I think if this would have been... Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, if I could add one thought to that first half to sum it up, and I think you've kind of skirted around it, and it might add to the point, but real like the reason I like seeing clubs like Erzurumspor come back up to the first league and hopefully stay up here in the Super League rather, is because they really do have a good local fan base who comes out to their games and really gets behind their team. And they were a factor in that first half. They were genuinely behind their team. And when they managed to get that goal, there was like that euphoria. The be-in kept kind of going to the fans. And it was, like...
Yeah, their first goal in the Super League in 20 years. I mean...
Of course, right? But you saw the guys like lined up against the fence. And it was all these like 40 to 50-year-old like... almost like stereotypical, like kind of shepherd looking. Like it was kind of funny in a way, but definitely great, and not just funny. Like it was good to see.
18,000 people in the stadium. That's a lot,
Yeah.
I mean, 18,408 was the announced attendance, so that's almost 20,000 people in the stadium there. And I hope they can do that against Akhisar and against Alanya and against Antalya too. It would be great. I don't know whether Erzurum are traditionally a club that has huge turnout, but I think if they can average 13 to 15,000 people this season, that would be absolutely amazing. And definitely I hope they can stay up if that's the case. But I have to add, I wrote a couple of previews for some magazines and stuff like that for the Super League this season, and for websites, and one of the questions is always, which teams do you consider the main relegation candidates this year? So
they've got to be there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, then I went on and I you just take a look at the squads and you just compare the squads on paper. And I have to say, on paper, to me, Erzurumspor are by far the weakest team in the league. That doesn't mean that in practice they'll be the weakest team. I think we saw in the first half what they're capable of. Okay. I think that definitely wasn't the team that's going to be led to the slaughter. But then in the second half, I think we kind of did see a team that could, fall for that. And I think quality-wise, they have a couple of fun players, like Zeroumaje. They have Egemen Korkmaz, who they wasn't playing today. I think that Souk guy was good. The Senegalese player they had up front, his name eludes me right now. Sunu, I think he was quite good, really weighing on our defense. They have some fun players, but purely based on paper and how familiar I am with those players, because of course, a player like Sunu, like that Souk, I'm not familiar with those, but purely based on the players I am familiar with, comparing their squad to the rest of the league, I think that they are by far the weakest team on paper. So this was a game, I kind of went into this game with a double feeling, kind of like, maybe we should probably drop points here, maybe even lose for the board to realize how serious things are.
But on the other hand, do you really want to drop points against arguably the weakest team in the league? Yeah, nobody else is going to drop points. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm glad we won, and I'm also
got it. At the end of the day, you can't. Your like club politics should never cloud the grand scheme, right? Which is that like we're supporting a football team here. We want them to win. But you're right though. Like Again, I think just like the game against Lask, where we like survived by the skin on our teeth or whatever you call it, but I think the message should still be resounding to the board that like we do not have
a surplus.
Yeah, we're not, or not even a surplus. We don't even have we're in the red at this stage. We don't have enough to get to the finish line. Certainly not at the level that we want to be at. Especially and in the Europa League. For the Europa League to pay off financially for us, it would require us to do fairly well in it. And that means having at least
get out of the groups. Yeah.
Exactly. And that means having at least a squad good enough to do that. Tolga Zengin does not get us there. Not at this stage in his career, not having taken all the bumps that he's taken along the path. He's scarred. You can see it. It's in his eyes. You can see it in his face. Not in Twitter, practice, not in the photos, not in those great promo photos Beşiktaş is taking for their Twitter, Twitter page. But when he's on the pitch, it's like a completely different Tolga, from even when he arrived. He's not.
I made the point on Twitter on the Beşiktaş International account because I was live tweeting the match, because normally everyone does that, but sometimes I do it when he can't. And I was live tweeting the match, and after the goal, I made the point, and I didn't say this to be mean. I didn't say this because I hate Tolga. This was genuinely what I was seeing on the pitch. I said Tolga looks like an 18-year-old goalkeeper making his debut for the senior squad. He looks nervous as a child on his first day of school. That is how Tolga was playing in the first half, and especially opening 20 minutes. That was Tolga. Yeah. That wasn't me being mean. That wasn't me picking on him, singling him out. That was genuinely how he was playing. He was nervous as a Nelly. I don't understand. He is 35 years old. He's the team's captain. He has hundreds of appearances at senior level. He is an international goalkeeper. He has played Champions League. He has played Europa League. How on earth is it possible that you are so utterly insecure? I don't understand that. I don't understand a club who is willing to risk their season by fielding a goalkeeper like that as your first choice. It's not, you can't justify it anymore. No. It was difficult to justify 3 years ago when he was 32, 33 years old. Now at 35, with there absolutely being no upside whatsoever in playing him over even Utku.
I know.
There's no upside anymore. Can Utku really do that much worse than this?
I don't think so. Honestly, I really don't. I really don't think so. In fact, I would argue that from the glimmers I saw against those Hungarian sides in the preseason, I think he could be capable of doing exactly what we've seen Tolga do thus far. And then with the incentive being that with these knocks, he could then be building on something, right? We would be reaping some rewards for that shakiness right now. There's no reward long term for the shakiness that is Tolga Zengin.
Let's be clear. Putting a 21-year-old goalkeeper in the goal right now.
Yeah, we're not advocating that.
Yeah, and you have the ability that you're going to burn him for the rest of his career. That he's going to make mistakes and his confidence is going to sack into his feet, his boots, and that you lose him. That's possible. So I'm definitely not saying go with Utku. I'm not saying that, but going with Tolga right now, oh my God, it's just not and you know what? In the first half, the feeling I also had is that he looked so sluggish when going up in the air, and there was this one shot that he had to tip from under the bar, and he just looked super super clumsy, and the string of corners that led to the goal that got started because he wasn't able to keep a ball, and I think it was a relatively simple ball even, and then I think the corner before they score, he actually doesn't manage to keep it in, and he tried to punch it out into a throw in, but he didn't succeed, and it does feel like I'm picking on him now, but he was just there's absolutely no.
He's not what we need.
You cannot expect defenders to feel confident in their goalkeeper when he is doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we saw, and it can always get worse. It can always be worse, if you look at Volkan Demirel the last couple of weeks for Fenerbahce, yesterday, I don't know if you saw the goal that he conceded. It can always get worse. It's clear.
I'll never forget the butt save, right? Like that. Volkan, there's always worse for sure, but
but it's so painfully obvious that we can't go into this season trusting Tolga to be our number one. I'm completely fine with him being our backup goalkeeper. I have no problem with him playing a game here and there. But I think you're putting a lot of pressure on him that he cannot handle anymore. I think he has proven throughout his career at Beşiktaş that he is not a goalkeeper that does well under pressure.
Yeah.
And putting that burden on him again after sitting on the bench for 2 years, where I think he was perfectly comfortable, I don't think you're doing him any favors, and you're not doing the coach any favor.
You're not doing the fans any favor.
You're not doing the fans any favor. Who are you doing any favors?
Tolga's endgame, maybe.
No, you're not. I swear to God, he does not want to be there. I swear, he doesn't want to play. He doesn't feel comfortable.
It looks like it. You're right. No, I can't argue with that in logic. No, it can't go on much longer. I really hope they see it. It should be so painfully obvious. He looks like one of those guys now who's already prepared himself to mentally move on to that phase where he's like a goalkeeper's coach, maybe even a head coach. I don't know. He has a great demeanor.
I think he has been. I think after Fabri came in and Fabri took over, I think in his mind he was okay. This is the last chapter of my career. Probably I'm gonna finish it sitting on the bench from one of the biggest clubs in Turkey. I'm still the captain.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm still an important figure in the dressing room.
They've got
but I don't.
Utku and Ersin Destanoğlu, right? They've got some young guys who I can kind of talk to and bring under my wing, and he had a role. Yeah, he had a role to play. He didn't have a huge salary. Nobody's really worried about him.
The salary was quite big for a reserve.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
I think mentally he had checked out as the first goalkeeper already. I don't think it's that easy to get back into that frame of mind.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, I think he, we all know that he wasn't good enough anymore for that 2 years ago, let alone now. He hasn't gotten better in 2 years' time. Come on.
He really hasn't.
But still, I do feel like if we get the necessary quality injections in other places, a striker, a 10.
Yeah, if we can guarantee 3 goals a game, then we can afford the 1 goal a game on average. He'll blow.
Yeah, but if our midfield is more dominant and retains possession, then you will run into far less of these games with intensive pressure on you the way we had in the first half here. I think the lack of ability for our midfield to dominate the game and to dictate the game plays into that. And you're always going to have those types of matches, those away games where the home team is going to come at you with fire. And, you're always going to have that. And it doesn't matter how good your midfield is. You're always going to have to learn to cope with that. And the opening 20 minutes are going to be difficult no matter how good you are. But I think our midfield today, we saw that clearly they weren't up to it. I mean, our midfield today was Gary Medel, Najib, and Oğuzhan. And you think then, okay, you have 2 holding midfielders, 2 defensive midfielders. You would imagine that you can, hold
defend.
The ball then, right?
Yeah, right. At least.
But I mean, people have been riding Atiba's ass for the last 2 years and talking smack about some people. I mean, a lot of fans appreciate him, but there are those fans that, in my opinion, have a very irrational disliking of him because he doesn't play forward enough to their liking. But I think the difference is clear. If you see us play with or without Atiba, I think we retain possession a lot more when we have Atiba. And I think in games like this,
I'm convinced that he has a role in every match, at the very least, to come in towards the end and add some stability and shore things up, because his presence, and not just he shouldn't at all be kept to that role. He has. If we're choosing between playing Necip over Tolga, I don't see how Atiba wouldn't have been his go-to.
Yeah,
honestly, I don't. I think we know 100% what Necip is, what he is as a player and what he's capable of becoming, which is, I don't think, very much more than what he already has been.
He's at his, I mean, he's 27 years old. He's not going to get much better anymore. I mean, come on, let's be honest. Necip hasn't improved in 7 years or 8 years. He's been what he I mean, well, okay, maybe he has improved a little bit, but he's basically been the same player for his entire Beşiktaş career.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think he has made any huge improvements.
Gosh, I mean, in some ways, like, since you consider like development as a metric of someone's value, he's regressed in some ways, because it's, gosh, I mean, when do your kind of bonehead decisions that always impact the team negatively become a liability that you can't really like trust in a competitive game environment, honestly? Because I feel like we've crossed that threshold a few times with Necip, and like we've got this like, oh, he's the club's boy, right? He's the Beşiktaş. I'll never forget that odd Slaven Bilic comment about how if we had 11 Necips, we'd be great. Like if we had 11 Necips, we would be a horror show.
Then you relegate.
Oh my God, yeah. Relegate, like, yeah, I think we'd probably be disqualified from the league for like excess red cards. I mean, we wouldn't make it to the end of the season. But anyway, but so yeah, that Atiba Hutchinson by all means has a role to play if we're still considering playing like that. Anyway, but no. That's it. Like for this match, there's not much more to say, is there?
Well,
who's your man of the match?
I think we have to go with Ricardo Quaresma because he did have 2 assists.
I was going to say Negredo, actually. I was going to say Negredo because of what you mentioned before about his effort, his energy, his persistence. You know, given how little incentive perhaps he has to really perform at this stage, right? Like, so my pick would be Negredo, but so you're going with Quaresma.
I'm going with Quaresma because the corner, the goal is kind of what breaks it open. He did step up, I felt like. People are picking on his assist on Negredo. I'm not 100% sure why. I think he did the exact thing he had to do there. He had to go for a low cross. That's something he does really rarely. I think he made the right decision, so I'm not sure why people are... I'd have to watch it back, but people are saying it's a bad pass and it was too slow and whatever.
It's people with, people's agendas, right? Kaan and I had just been talking about this pre-cast. We should have like a special precast, like for the if you follow us on all of the platforms.
We'll put that on what's that thing called? The thing that they do for the people who donate money to their
podcast. Yeah.
What's that called? Patreon, yes, exactly. We'll start a Patreon for 2 people, and we'll let them in on all the pre-podcast recordings and all that stuff.
All the slander and gossip.
Yeah, when we're talking shit about people, did you see this guy's opinion? Well, what a stupid idiot,
But so what I was getting at was that like this is becoming a recurring issue, and of course it's a product of the age we live in, social media. Everyone's got something to say, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Look at us.
Right, here we are. And we started a whole freaking show about it. But really though, one has to be sort of weary, in general in life, right? Like you have to approach your life that like if you feel really strongly about something, you have to be sure of the veracity of what it is that you feel strongly about. You can't feel strongly about something and like not quite know what it is you're talking about, because that leads to lots of trouble for everyone.
That's important that you're open to change your mind.
Exactly, right? And so in the vein of all the criticism that people like Quaresma get, and people like Babel and Gökhan Gönül and whoever else it is that people like to pick on, we have to be weary of this. The agendas that we're bringing into how we view a match, because I was watching people talking smack about Ryan Babel early on in the game, and I was honestly fairly bewildered because from I'm not objective, we're all human, but from my perspective, he seemed to be out there putting in a lot more effort than some of the other guys, at least kind of trying to put his foot into the situation and make something happen in a way that not many other guys were. And of course, it wasn't working. Nothing was working in that half. But of all the guys to pick on, that felt odd. And again, it just made me cognizant of the way that people bring these agendas and these things from transfer rumor gossip stuff from a month and a half ago that flavors how they view something.
I think it's a lot
in
of
front of their eyes.
prejudice. They have a certain image of a player in their head, and it's maybe an opinion that a lot of their friends share or just a lot of people on social media share. That doesn't necessarily make it correct. That doesn't necessarily make it a correct opinion. People refer to Babel as putting in ghost performances, and I couldn't disagree more. I mean,
of all the criticisms, that would be the last.
In these games that we've played, he's popped up a lot in the box. He, came up short on a lot of crosses where he could have headed it, but he's there, he's present. And he's also getting stuck in. He's working hard, being physical, trying to win the ball and keep the ball in between 2 to 3 defenders. You can't say he's being a ghost then. I mean, if we're talking about ghosts, look at Giuliano for Fenerbahce, for example. He literally disappears for long periods on end. Eden Hazard.
Who, newsflash, may have just gotten $11 million for his side in a sale, but we don't care about that on this podcast.
Eden Hazard, in large parts of his career, especially when he was playing for Belgium, for the national team, and that's very much improved in the recent year or two or whatever. But he very much he was very much a player that picked his moments in games. Messi picks his moments in games, but Messi, of course, is a lot more, whatever. But Hazard, Hazard has plenty of careers in his matches in his career where he is literally nowhere to be seen for 30 minutes, and then he does something brilliant. That's
absolutely.
I don't think that you can say Ryan Babel is putting in ghost performances. Yes, is he putting in a good performance? No, I'm not saying that.
Especially when you consider that is he leading our team in goals scored right now?
I guess he gets 2, so
yeah, right. Like nobody else does.
Lauren technically leads it, I guess.
In competitive play because of Europa League, but you know what I mean. As far as point being simply, and
as for your point, sorry, with the whole Ricardo Quaresma thing, this is very interesting to me. Sally in our group, who is one of the biggest haters on Quaresma.
Yeah, and he's butting heads with everyone who is the biggest fanboy right now.
Exactly. So you have like the yin and the yang. But with Sally, the thing is, a couple of weeks ago, I remember it. Last year, for the last 2 years, last year especially, he was consistently pounding and hammering on how Quaresma is the cancer of this team. Basically, is what he was saying. He's the reason. Which is
really harsh language.
Well,
guys. cancer and rape.
I'm not quoting.
People use these words.
Yes, but I'm not quoting him. I'm just that's the point.
Actually, no. I think that was actually a quote from today's group chat. So you're not inaccurate.
Okay, but anyway, that was his point for a whole year, and he just kept repeating it every week, the same thing after every single match. Oh, we're only crossing. It's all Quaresma's fault. And then in the preseason, I think it was it even the Torshavn game or something? I don't remember, but Quaresma wasn't playing. And I had been saying to him for the whole year, the only reason we're only crossing the ball is because our center doesn't work. And suddenly,
we don't have a mid.
And suddenly 2 weeks ago or something, or 3 weeks ago, he had this epiphany. He's like, "Oh my god! It wasn't Quaresma's fault after all. It's because
he hasn't been there all
that can do anything and create anything." And suddenly he was like, "Oh, I was so wrong about Quaresma." And then today, he just completely falls into his routine again and is right back at hating on Quaresma again because the only thing we do is cross. It's the exact same problem. The reason Quaresma is forced to always just cross the ball, and we have seen with Jermaine Lens last week that it's possible to do other stuff. That with a guy that's moving constantly and creating movement for the team, that you can be a lot more dynamic. And I think that Jermaine Lens was a big reason for Ozan's good performance against Akhisar, which to me was probably Ozan's best performance in a long time. And I think Jeremy Menz had a very big part in that because he was creating so much movement, and Ozan was playing into that. He was moving a lot, and we looked really fluid in that first half. And you know what? We have to be honest, Quaresma just doesn't do that. He just sticks to the line, and he wants to cross it in, and he waits a lot. He doesn't run a lot off the ball anymore. He's 35. He's almost 35 years old. Can we really expect him to be constantly running off the ball still?
No.
Plus, I mean, that's not really his style. So that's something the coach is opting for. You know that. But I do genuinely think that if you have a more dominant midfield with more creativity in it, that you're not going to be just crossing it all the time, whether Janner and Quaresma are both on the pitch or not.
And like I said, even just the threat, even if that number 10 is like having an off day or even year at the bottom line, if you have that guy with that potential there who can at least make the defenders think, oh crap, like if we overcompensate on the wings, assuming that's what they're going to do, then they're going to nail us in the middle. Just the threat of that would be so potent for this team because we have so much talent. Like instead of hitting on, I'm going to have to use my own beeps now, but instead of hitting on Babel or Lenz or Quaresma or whoever it is that you feel like hitting on, just like recognize we have an abundance of talent there. We don't have to really like pick sides too much. We can just say on their day, any one of them can play and we'll be happy about it. And let's just move past that debate and recognize that the only problem and what really contributes most to them having those off days is the fact that their opposition knows where their attack is coming from every single game because there's nowhere else it could possibly be coming from. So the lack of a 10, if there's anything to take away from everything we've seen thus far competitively, it's that the lack of a 10 is not just kind of a philosophical conundrum. It's a real legitimate problem that's going to start to cost us points sooner rather than later.
I compare it to a puzzle. If you have a puzzle of 250 pieces, and it can be the most beautiful puzzle in the world, but if you only give the coach 178 pieces of that puzzle, he can't complete it. There's no way, We need someone there. We need a quality player. We don't just need someone to buy someone. We need someone who can add something to the team.
Agreed.
And I think that's the perfect segue into the next segue. I think we have talked way too much about this game already.
Yeah, probably so. But let's segue right into it. I mean, I think, look, the transfer rumor wire has finally begun to sort of percolate again. That's the only good news to speak of, because no news has actually developed into anything concrete yet. Although, I will say, and this is literally hot off the wire, and I think it needs mentioning, the Mirror of England has just reported, I'm going to read you the headline, fresh off, Loris Karius is in talks to move to Beşiktaş, with Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp ready to let him leave. Liverpool will listen to offers for Karius, whose future at Anfield looks uncertain after the arrival of Alisson, which is fairly obvious. Basically, it just goes on to say Beşiktaş want him, the Turkish club have made an approach, blah, 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 blah. We don't know any details as far as what that would look like, but it sounds as if Loris Karius might be the front runner for our goalkeeping position right now. What are your thoughts, Kaan?
I think we spoke about it last week. I don't think that he's a realistic target for us. But obviously, if we could get him, I'd be all for it. At this point, you know what? I'm almost at the point where I'd be like, oh, you know what? Harun Tekin, come on, man.
Yeah. Well, no, actually,
get over here, Scorpion style, Mortal Kombat. Get over here. Maybe you can insert that. But no, I'm at this point anything but Tolga, really, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, my only argument against Harun Tekin was I watched Erzurumspor play against. Who did they play against last week? Was it Galatasaray or Fener?
Fener, I think. No, wait. Yes.
Whoever it was, Harun Tekin looked miserable. Like he made.
He always plays like shit against Fener.
He made 3 errors that were like horrifically. Yeah, I didn't even want to. yeah, I don't want anything to do with him either. But I'm with you as far as like anyone else maybe, but like we definitely need someone else. So and besides that, then the next rumor, and maybe do you have any other rumors? Like, what's the latest on outgoing as far as Domagoj Vida, Negredo?
Okay.
You know, like what do we have there?
Well, we were recording on Thursday right after the last game, and I guess while we were recording or after we finished, the news basically was broke by AS in Spain that Negredo had scored his. It's kind of funny. He had scored his last goal for Beşiktaş because he was off to Monaco apparently signing. So he had supposedly agreed with Monaco, and Beşiktaş would let him go on a free transfer, and he would join Monaco. But obviously AS weren't right because he scored again today, so that was clearly not his last goal for
Even
Beşiktaş.
Their inflammatory headline was off immediately.
But I mean, it can still happen, of course. He can still join Monaco. We don't know. In regards to Vida, there really hasn't been any updates to my knowledge. There has been a little bit of an update on Wagner Love. I believe that Göztepe were in talks with Swedish international Marcus Berg, and they were kind of awaiting some sort of an answer of him yesterday. I don't think I haven't heard anything that it has turned out into anything positive. And they are also considering loaning Wagner Love from us. And if Berg doesn't work out, they want to increase their efforts for Love. So I guess that Berg isn't working out, so they may be going more aggressively for Love. So Wagner Love could end up joining Göztepe on loan. Anything else? I don't really think there's anything else outgoing-wise at the moment.
No, and so incoming is where we have maybe an interesting discussion. The only thing we've not discussed before we part and leave our loyal followers until the next episode is to mention the kind of elephant in the room, perhaps. There was talk of Mexican international Marco Fabián landing in Istanbul to talk with the club about joining. Thoughts?
When I hear stuff like we had a couple of weeks ago where there were these rumors that Jack Wilshere was in Istanbul and was there to finalize a move to Fener. I always find it very dodgy when there are these and I'm not saying that he wasn't in Istanbul. There's no way for me to know one way or the other, but I always find it very dodgy when there aren't any pictures.
Yeah, that is odd.
And obviously it's possible they bring them in completely under. And
I'll say his Instagram and Twitter have basically been blacked out for the last couple of weeks. He has not been included on Eintracht's. What is their? Eintracht Frankfurt. Yeah, he was not included in their last starting lineup. So there is some validity, and actually, there's a quote in Hurriyet from his manager, basically claiming that he's not opposed to staying with Eintracht Frankfurt, but like they have to meet some sort of financial requirements, and he could very well see himself playing elsewhere. So, I mean, it lends itself to the idea that perhaps this is a ploy to get a salary raise, and Beşiktaş is the unwitting victim of it. But, it doesn't hurt that he is a natural number 10 himself, which is a position that we've both spoken to Beşiktaş needing greatly. And he's an interesting player. Do you have any thoughts about him as a player?
Well, first, actually, I want to say, because I did message Tom about this, and he did get back to me. He said that Fabián was kind of basically saying in the Mexican media that he had lots of offers, but it looked like there was basically only Beşiktaş that was really interested in him. He didn't really have to say much more about that. And then, well, I don't know about him being a regular for Frankfurt. I mean, I'm looking now and I'm seeing he only played 7 Bundesliga matches last season.
Is that right?
Yeah, 7 last season and 24 the year before, I think. And then 11 in his first 6 months. So I guess he joined in January of 2016. He played 11 games after the winter break, and then he played 24 games in the second season out of a potential 34. And then last season he only played 7 out of a potential 34.
So I wonder if he was injured, perhaps, or
maybe he was injured. I don't know, but that's not really giving me a lot of
confidence.
I mean, if
he
you
did,
can't
he did play for Mexico's national team, which would suggest that, you know, if he wasn't playing because he wasn't up to snuff for Eintracht Frankfurt, I don't know if he would make their squad because they're a fairly competitive one. And he played in the World Cup, actually.
Yeah. He played, I think, 25 minutes at the World Cup.
Only 25 minutes?
Yep. He played 263 minutes in qualifiers, and he played 25 minutes in the World Cup itself. He had 1 sub appearance.
Huh.
And then basically he played some friendly matches in 2018.
Well,
he's definitely not a starter for Mexico.
And I know he's a somewhat divisive figure as well in the, you know, sort of gossip pages. Like he was involved in that big dust up that a number of Mexican national team players had at a hotel. I don't know if there were prostitutes involved, definitely alcohol, but it was definitely no good, and a number of them got kicked off of the national team, including him, for, like, temporarily. But he also has a kind of cult following of sorts that seems to be very vocally in support of him. He's one of those figures that I guess you could probably compare to like a Quaresma, perhaps, in that regard. You know, who has ardent followers and then also a sea of haters as well. But from what I could tell, he has some ability on the pitch and he has some utility. He has the ability to play in different areas of the pitch. He has a flair for shots from the outside that are surprisingly precise and consistently so. But that's not really what you'd be bringing him in for. And beyond that, he does show, I mean, given the abundance of talent that we have on the wings, and that we really need an attacking midfielder to, as we've said, sort of provide an alternative, you know, the threat of someone being there. He shows enough with the ball that I think it wouldn't take long for our opponents to have to position themselves to be, weary of what we would be able to do down the middle. If, of course, there was any truth to any of the stuff about him coming and being in Istanbul and any of that stuff to begin with. But, you know, I've got to say that initially I was negative because I thought we've already got enough of these sort of troublemaker type characters, these divisive figures who, I mean, like Babel, I didn't even know to be one until, you know, apparently he became one with us. And
I don't think he's a troublemaker. I think people blow his stuff way out of proportion.
Yeah, I mean, you know, but guys like Pepe and Quaresma, the guys who really stand out as having, you know, love him or hate him kind of personalities. Cult following.
Pepe, that's always on the pitch, you know, because of his dirty playing style, but never in terms of professionalism you know, riling up the dressing room or anything like that. I think, you know, I never heard anything negative about Pepe in regards to a relationship with a coach or something like that. I think it's always kind of been just the way how nasty he can be on the pitch.
Yeah.
For Quaresma, he's a volatile character. Yeah. You know that he has a volatile personality, and he has ran into spats with multiple coaches throughout his career. So he's definitely a quote-unquote troublemaker.
Sure. Well, and so in appraising Marco Fabián, though, I got the sense that he's really not the troublemaker that perhaps he's been deemed in certain circumstances. It looks like perhaps he had a streak of that in him for some time, but he looks to, he's now turned, I believe, 28 or 29 just recently, which is, on the better side of 30.
29.
To his defense, right? It's on the better side of 30, so you could get a couple good years out of him theoretically. And then on top of that, it does seem as if he's settled down, like he's doing a lot of charity work of late. And, of course, a lot of that's going to be public image type stuff. Maybe a PR firm was hired in the process. But for whatever it's worth, it does seem like he's more focused on his football. And he's become a regular contributor with his national team, if not, not a dynamo of any sort,
It's not, no. No, I don't share your opinion. I'm not. No, I'm very, very much no. If you want to bring this guy in, then definitely has to be a loan. You don't want to contract this guy for multiple years. I definitely don't think that's a good idea. I mean, his career at Frankfurt, this is of course purely statistically. So. But I'm not liking what I'm seeing in regards to that. And you shouldn't form opinions purely based on statistics.
Yeah, I was going to say, I that was why I had initially become anti-Fabiano.
But on the other end of the spectrum, I also don't think you have to be pro because some people like him.
No. I looked at footage. I really genuinely think he has some qualities on the field.
But also
you can't judge it from YouTube videos either, because of course they're gonna find those moments.
Are just highlights.
Yeah,
you can make any player look like $1 million on a YouTube video. No, it's difficult. I don't think either of us really know the guy. We haven't really. I asked Tom on his opinion, but he hasn't really gotten back to me on that. So
See, I've scooped you, my friend. I actually got a hold of Tom Marshall, our ESPN. Mexican football analyst, I don't know what you'd call him, superstar. Maybe that's excessive. Maybe I'm going too far. But he did reply to me, and I'll tell you what he said. He actually gave a sort of passively positive comment. I really fed him the line. So he wrote, reports are that Marco Fabián is in Turkey with Beşiktaş his next destination. And then I wrote, Beşiktaş is in dire need of a creative number 10, though not necessarily a goal scorer. More of a creative link with the forwards in the center of the midfield. We have an overabundance of talent on the wings and are predictable as such. We need to mix it up. Does he fit the billing? He replied,
yes or something.
I think so. I think so. And he said, good shot from long distance as well. So, not glowing. He didn't like write, a poetic, ribaldry. There was nothing special about what he had to say, but
no real insights, really.
Yeah. He did.
And
we of course had he could fit the role that I had laid out for him, which is not negative.
Of course, we have our Colombian posse. They're really not a fan of his.
They're anti-everything Mexican. That should be prefaced. It's not to say that they're racist, but they're definitely
there's definitely some
animosity,
underlying tension there.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but Fabián for me, I think I said it from day one. I want a marquee signing in that position, and to me, I don't want a question mark signing there. It doesn't need to be a huge star, but it needs to be a player that you're bringing in quality. And I spoke about this earlier. I think with Fabián, not a tall guy, just 1.70 m or something like that, rather small.
5'7", 5'8", I think.
I think we need more, and I think
he's a little guy, yeah.
Serkan Rejber went on the air today, and he was speaking about Nasser Chadli, and he said, "Look, what do Beşiktaş need? A right back, an attacking midfielder, and a striker. Is Chadli a right back? No. Is Chadli an attacking midfielder, a 10? No. Is Chadli a striker? No. So why would you want to get Nasser Chadli, is what he asked. I don't share that opinion. I think Chadli can perfectly function in a midfield role. I think he's a very versatile player. He has a lot of attacking flair. He has good short combination ability, passing. He can give good passes, true passes. He can cross the ball. He can do anything.
For the sake of brevity, let me cut you off and say this. Right, last week, it wasn't even quite last week, but right, the last episode, we talked about how the board needed to get on the phone, stop sleeping, have plans A, B, C, and D laid out. Now, for the number 10 position, I want this to be like on the placard for the Black Eagles podcast. Number 1, plan A, number 10 option is Shinji Kagawa. Do you agree?
Of course.
Yes. Okay, so that's what we're going to say. Now, plan B and plan C.
If Fenerbahce sign him, we have to remove all of this.
Yeah, right, exactly. We hate it. We never had any interest.
Who is this Shinji Kagawa?
He's an overhyped, like, Man U reject. No. We really want Shinji Kagawa. Maybe I should even delete that. No, I won't, because we want to be honest here. But Shinji Kagawa is our plan A. Plan B and C is where you and I veer. I would veer towards Marco Fabián for the sake of having a natural fit at number 10. You would rather have Nasser Chadli in that slot. So that's
for sure.
For me, it's a lot closer. Like, I think you probably have Chadli like way up above Fabián, and I have Fabián like just like in most regards. I want Chadli, and in fact, I'll even add another component to that. If you consider guys like Kaan Touré are on their last year of their contracts, guys like Ryan Babel are on the last year of their contracts. Chadli is the type of purchase that would not inherently be tied to that number 10 role forever and could become quite useful long term. So, in that regard, that's why, like, I'm not by any stretch disheartened by the purchase of Nasser Chadli. Unlike you, where I think you would be quite disheartened by the purchase of Marco Fabián. But what I'd like to contribute in my defense of Marco Fabián as a final gesture is that having a Mexican following, you know, one often thinks about the value when you bring in a Japanese player, for example, or a Chinese player. That doesn't happen much because there aren't very many good ones, but you know, of the sort of marketing potential and the value of reaching that market. The value of reaching the Mexican market is nothing to scoff at, and that's a very passionate fan base as far as football goes. You know, he's definitely not the attacking midfielder I would choose first by any stretch. And in fact, the Mexican national team has another number 10 who goes by the name of Pizarro, who comes in and out, who's only 23, I believe. And like, I would be far more excited by that move personally, given that we don't, you know, I think we really might want to swing for the fences and go for someone youngish, who's more of a long-term move, and he really fits the bill, and he's probably going to mesh into a vital role for the Mexican national team going forward, and he's still young. And but anyway, the value of having a guy who is on the Mexican national team and who does have a nice following, you know, I would definitely imagine like the streets of New York City, right? Because the Mexican population is not confined to Mexico. Throughout the United States, I would not at all be surprised if you saw a number of Beşiktaş shirts getting sold. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some Fabián shirts on the streets of New York City.
He's that popular?
Enough so. And I think it's one of those scenarios where a player, if he matches a scenario, you know, if he fits a role and like if the club grows with him on it, you know, having a guy like Marco Fabián in like the quarterfinals of the Europa League or semifinals, you know, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see some Fabián shirts get sold here, honestly, you know, because that's the kind of thing that cements a player's reputation with his, you know, diaspora.
Yes,
or what have you.
When we're talking Kagawa, you're talking a fantastic player in combination with exposure in Japan. With Fabián, you're talking a player that did so in the Bundesliga for Frankfurt. Couldn't really apparently settle as a full-fledged starter there, so he's 29 years old.
Yeah, no, I mean it's not.
I mean, when we got Sosa, he had already played for Napoli, he had played for Atletico Madrid and all that stuff. It's different level. For me, Fabián is not an ambitious move.
It's not. No, it's not an ambitious move. It's definitely, I in an ideal scenario, we'd have an actual attacking midfielder who is better than Marco Fabián at a higher profile, who is maybe not quite at Shinji Kagawa's level, but who we would comfortably place as a plan B.
Can I give you a hot take?
Sure.
I'd take Jose Sosa back over taking Fabián.
Wow. Even at 34?
Yep. 33, yeah, sure. I'd take Sosa back for a year. Even though I don't like him whatsoever, especially the way after he treated the club and all that stuff. But honestly,
I don't even that pride element doesn't.
He knows the club. I'm sure he'd do fine. I think he would play for less money, maybe. I think Fabián, if you bring him in, he's probably gonna have a pretty big contract.
Yeah, I mean, all of these are factors, but they're sort of unknowns, I would say, and I don't know what his contract is in Germany, but the Germans aren't known to splurge to the extent that we would but
he'd probably be looking for a pretty big contract.
He'd want a bump. He'd probably want a bump, and it says at this age you wouldn't even fault him for it. But yeah, no, I think look, all of these are factors. I'm just pointing out that having access to the Mexican fan base, I can't say he's he's certainly not a star to the extent that Shinji Kagawa 100% is in Japan, but I definitely from my research have gathered that he has enough of a following, and so the benefit of this, I should say, is that his
and where can I ask where did he did he amass the following? I wonder.
Was through Chivas. So Chivas Guadalajara, which is a very probably I think Club America is probably the most prominent Mexican side historically, but then Chivas is their main rival and their kind of number 2 guy. And so that was where I think he experienced his golden era. Most of the highlights you find on YouTube seem to come from his time with Chivas. He was a bit of a cult hero there, and I think so that's where he got his following. But so
that makes perfect sense. It was a legitimate question. I was genuinely curious where he amassed a cult following.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
So it's not what I guess all of this information is to say that if you wake up one of these days to the news that we've signed Marco Fabián, I don't think it's cause for the end of days. Obviously, it would suggest that we failed on getting Shinji Kagawa, which is not a good look. And it's not going to be the transfer that it's probably much more akin to a Rodrigo Tabata than it would be something that we'd be hoping for along the lines of Shinji Kagawa. But
I think it'd be better than that. I mean,
hopefully, hopefully so. And I was always a diehard. I had a low key support for Tabata. I don't know if he ever got a fully fair shake. I think he was always held to the standard of the amount of money he was signed for, rather than,
of course, being the record transfer that weighed on him for sure. He wasn't a bad player, but
he wasn't what we
wasn't
needed.
Great either.
No,
but that's true. With that all said, I think that's
we should close it out.
Else?
We got to close it out on that note.
Okay.
For today's, let's do this before. I kind of I cobbled together an intro for Danny Pierce last week.
Yeah.
For today's hashtag after the beep, we've got a special guest. We've speaking of Mexico.
Well, first and foremost, I think this I want to kind of introduce what we want to do with this after the beep thing.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a chance for people who listen to the podcast. So all of you who are listening to the podcast, you all have the opportunity to appear on the podcast. Basically, on match day, or if there's a big transfer, if something big happened in the world of Beşiktaş, you can reach us on WhatsApp, and our number is in the info of the Black Eagles podcast Twitter account at @Eagles_podcast. The number is +32 499 331684. There you can reach us on WhatsApp and you can send us a voice message, 2 to 3 minutes long, preferably. If you have some really good insights, you can go a little bit longer, but we prefer around 2 to 3 minutes. And basically, it's like leaving a voicemail.
Yeah. And preference always goes to anyone who's at a match, who's speaking live from a stadium, getting us stadium sounds. Of course, you will absolutely have top priority if you can provide that. But that's not going to happen every week, particularly if you have a match in like Erzurum, right?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, for matches, or just send us your messages, and if you send us your message, you have a good chance that your message will appear in our After the Beep segment. Basically, what that's going to be, after our outro music is over, you'll hear a beep like in an old answering machine, and your message will be here to hear. If you drop your Twitter handle as well, just write that in text and your full name in the message that you send us, and then introduce yourself. Start off by, hello guys, this is Maria from Poland, whatever, and you just introduce yourself very briefly, and then just say what you have to say, and you can appear in our After the Beep segments. Now, for the home games at Vodafone Park, we'll most likely use Emre because he's usually there. But if you're on holiday or something like that, or you are also a season ticket holder and you have good English and you listen to this podcast, by all means send us your message and maybe we'll use yours. It'll be greatly appreciated. It's a chance for people to interact with the podcast a little bit. And we'll drop your Twitter handle in the description of the podcast so people can follow you and stuff like that. And we're not always going to introduce people with a huge introduction. I think that the theme of this is kind of like leaving a fun little voice message or something like that on an answering machine. Maybe, basically, that's how you have
some basic thoughts, like on a match day, right?
So basically, we're not always going to give a full, really big introduction. We'll just say, stay tuned for After the Beep or something like that. Yeah. So you know for sure that there will be a After the Beep segment this week. So without further ado, I'm going to lead us into the outro. You can follow Beşiktaş International at Beşiktaş_int. You can follow the podcast, of course, at Eagles_podcast. You can find our WhatsApp number in the info, in the description of that account. You can follow Sinan Schwarling at Sir_writes_a lot. You can follow myself, Kaan Bayazit, at Rosarian, RAZZERIAN.
Whoa!
And please, people, I'm going to let Sinan take us out, and remember to stay tuned after the beep.
That's right. And as always, guys, especially on a match day where we win and get our 3 points, go Beşiktaş!
Fair weather fan.
I say especially.
When we lose, you have to make it extra.
Remember,
Hello guys, it's me, Frank from Mexico City. I couldn't watch the full match. I watched only the first part of the match, and honestly Beşiktaş didn't play really well. The rival had many chances to score goals, but I think we need a goalkeeper because Tolgay Senin, I think he's not the right goalkeeper for Beşiktaş. I couldn't watch the full match. The first one, it was horrible. Beşiktaş didn't have too many options to score, and well, the rival had some other options to score. And it's good they have won 3-1. And it is important to get important points because last season that was the problem. We left too many points in easy matches. And well, I hope this season can be better than last one. And also on Thursday there will be an important match against Partizan in European competition, and I hope they can have a great result. So the second match that it's gonna be on Vodafone Park can be easier for Beşiktaş. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard, especially with great fans there in Partizan. But well, also Beşiktaş have great fans, and it's gonna be interesting what's gonna happen. Well, that's my opinion about the match, and I hope we can win this season again. We can become champion again. Bye bye.